This video is sponsored by HelloFresh. The Sandy Cheeks movie, just when I thought it actually couldn't get any worse. This is a movie that's gone through a little bit of development hell, and that's fair enough. Only now finally releasing on Netflix all the way later in August, even though I'm pretty sure the whole thing leaked out months and months ago. Now, these Spongebob movies have had a very dodgy time when it comes to quality. They were only really good the first time when they actually had, the main creator Steven Hillenburg on board to make the damn thing. That first initial movie is seen as the canon, real ending to anything SpongeBob, and the era we're currently in with SpongeBob is slightly controversial, against the creator's wishes, spin-off additional content on the side. And judging by the fact that even the very concept of this movie doesn't seem to have a lot of confidence in its idea, considering look at the size of Sandy Cheeks in the logo for the Sandy Cheeks movie. Jesus Christ, she's practically an afterthought. This movie is already stepping out on massive disadvantageous terms. Is there a demand for Sandy Cheeks as the main protagonist character? Surely everyone's here for SpongeBob, and how are they going to make it work? We've already had several episodes like SpongeBob being kidnapped or Gary being kidnapped, and now it's absolutely everybody else other than SpongeBob and Sandy being kidnapped. The entire town is hooked up by a giant crane, and it's one big kidnapping plot taking place over in the real world, because of course it does, it's a movie, it's got to be 3D and it's got to be real world, and it takes place during Texas. There is something of a good idea mixed into here, but I think just the premise alone still just sort of hammers it down horribly as it continues on, plus the fact that this is very much a Paramount movie. Let's get into things, shall we? In the very start of this movie, just opening up, you can already sense that it's a Paramount production in tone. I can't explain exactly what it is, but the way they direct for kids' productions feels extra kiddie, and in a way that I don't really think elevates the story or the characters or any of the actual premises. This feels like the Knuckles series, If you've seen anything from the Knuckles series, just expect that with the SpongeBob characters going into it. We immediately dive in with this fully 3D animation the whole way through, which, to be fair, is nice that it's 3D instead of 2D, but at the same time, it's not that good of a 3D. It's notably a downgrade 3D compared to prior SpongeBob 3Ds. I don't know why. Why would the budget go down for your... Oh, it's because it's a spin-off, because it's not actually SpongeBob. I guess that makes sense. Even still, they don't actually remove SpongeBob in this story. Of course, they can't, It's impossible to do a SpongeBob story without SpongeBob involved. So instead, what they do with the character of SpongeBob is he's relegated to the sidekick role. And to be fair, it is interesting. He does surprisingly fit into the sidekick role pretty well, in that he's just the weirdo guy who can transform doing Bugs Bunny antics on the side. I can sort of see how he fits into his universe more now that I see that he's not the center of the world already. But at the same time, because he is now relegated to the sidekick character, he has some additional traits that are a little bit weird and unappealing. Obviously, the different roles of all the different archetypes of sidekicks you can have in a story come with their own creative writing traits, right? But because every other sidekick, like Patrick and Squidward and Mr. Krabs, have all been taken away, SpongeBob now has to fill in the role of all of them. Some of them work in his favor, some of them really do not, The idea that Patrick is usually there to tell some stupid punchline on the side to elevate the humor works with SpongeBob. He is just another Patrick, it's just, there's one of him now, not two of them to bounce off each other. However, these sort of writing additions that a character like Squidward brings to the table is the fact that he is the punching bag. He's the one always getting hurt. He's the pessimistic one who has constant karma crashing down upon him. Because he's not really prevalent in this movie, SpongeBob is the one that doesn't have any pessimism. No, sure, he's just in his own little world, but he is the butt of all of the pain jokes. And I don't think it works with this case scenario. It's now in this scenario where if they're out flying through the desert and they're gonna whack into a cactus, it's the sponge that hits into the cactus. And he even expresses the fact that he does feel pain, and it makes him groggy every time he goes through one of these events now, even though it has also been confirmed in some canon of some episode in the TV show that he doesn't feel pain because he's a sponge. It's not even that they're playing off with that, it's just SpongeBob will always be the one to land flat on his face, and it feels a little uncomfortable because we've seen the guy be so childish and innocent this whole time, and now suddenly the world is ready to punch him in the balls for the sake of, well, Squidward's not here to do it. And in that way, the tone is very different for this movie, which is nice to see something varied, but I don't think it works either way. But before we go any further, if you'd like to support the channel, then do consider checking out the link at the top of our description as we talk about HelloFresh. With the days getting warmer and sunnier, get out of the kitchen with quick and easy recipes. Every week you can choose from 20 different home-cooked options that are ready within 20 minutes or less. And as someone who has been a subscriber for HelloFresh for a couple of years, I can vouch that they have a wide variety of recipes to take the load off when it comes to evening plannings. HelloFresh delivers fresh quality produce from the farm to your door in less than a week so you can savor those summer flavors right from home. No longer will you have to deal with the situation of opening your fridge, seeing there's nothing really in there and then shutting it and opening it once again soon afterwards. You don't have to worry about wondering what to make for dinner. Give HelloFresh a try, choose your chosen recipes, and you'll have delivered the fresh ingredients and everything pre-proportioned and right at your doorstep. Minimum hassle and more Now once again, the link is in the description, and following through with a plan through me will be directly supporting the channel, so I do appreciate it if you do choose to directly support us. Thanks HelloFresh again for the sponsorship, and let's get back to the rest of the video. Though when I say that this movie is terrible, and I'd actually go on to say this is the worst SpongeBob movie so far, I'm not even necessarily talking about what they did to SpongeBob. What really brings this movie down is, and I think with the whole franchise, it's their weird relationship with the real world, you know? In the first movie, it is almost entirely taking place under the water, and then when it is above water, it's for a one shot, and it's for a David Hasselhoff moment and skirting along the surface. It's minimal, it's nice, it's, you know, referential, but in a way that really sort of fits into the SpongeBob world by not really tarnishing or expanding the universe in a way it doesn't want to go. Especially when you consider the original SpongeBob series is still predominantly underwater and 2D. That's clearly what they're going for. The movies are just several one-offs. For the second movie, it then expands into this whole pirate sequence for the final act because they wanted to blurt out more of the real-life elements. The third movie, you've got that whole road trip and all sorts of characters in the real world existing to have all sorts of sequences to fit in all the more celebrity appearances you can. No longer a one and done with David Hasselhoff. And then for this movie here, it is like 90% above world instead. We are really just slowly turning to be more invaded on this universe. What the actual plotline is there is this evil laboratory with 3 evil scientists, and they have come to kidnap all of Bikini Bottom. How exactly they know that Bikini Bottom really exists and that they know every individual character isn't necessarily explained. They say that Sandy is a spy. Okay, is that like brought up with anything she does? Why does it take 20 years for that to take place? Where is this in the timeline? And there are so many scenes with these 3 humans that is just so very Paramount. You know what I'm saying? It's got that guy. You've seen that guy. He's playing his guy character role again. And as for the villainous super evil lady herself, she is easily the worst villain in all of the SpongeBob franchise. Hello there, thank you for making it halfway through this video. This is the part where I tell you to subscribe if you're interested in future animated movie news. There are all sorts of movies coming out later in the year, and we hope to cover practically all of them, so come join if you haven't already. And I'll let you get back to the rest of our, admittedly terrible rating review for Saving Bikini Bottom, the Sandy Cheeks movie. She is easily the worst villain in all of the SpongeBob franchise, because again, she's just kind of playing to a pigeonholed typecast role, and it's not very SpongeBob. It's not very animated at all. She's just kind of muted the whole time and never really given any direction to do anything fantastical. Or when she does do something fantastical, it's one of the worst things I've ever seen in animation this year. Now, of course, with practically all of Bikini Bottom being kidnapped and taken to this laboratory, it's the job of SpongeBob and Sandy to go get over to that laboratory to save absolutely everybody. They use a geyser at the bottom of the town to erupt themselves upwards beyond the surface of the sea, 50,000 feet above the surface to then land on top of a plane. Sure, okay, cartoon logic, I'll just about allow it. And then they end up flying way above Texas and then have to skydive back down onto Texas. The rest of the plotline is them getting a little bit detoured in Texas. Sandy ends up reuniting with the rest of her circus career family members. It's kind of a lot of characters to throw at you all at once, and they're not really given that much great screen time. It's just more of an expansion, which, to be fair, I don't hate. Learning about more Sandy-esque characters, I think, is actually a decent expansion to make. And then, you know, of course, eventually they get to the laboratory. Now, what are they actually doing at the laboratory, you might ask? It's quite an ironic thing. As I understand it, it's basically just the laboratory wants to clone every character in order to sell them as merchandising. It is legitimately basically the race for what Paramount as a studio and Nickelodeon as a studio legitimately have been doing to the SpongeBob franchise over the years, and they're like, no, I don't want to be merchandised and cloned forever and ever and ever, while that is actively, practically what is happening in the real world. It's weird. All the other characters in Bikini Bottom, even when they're sometimes let out of the cage, don't really do much other than stand around next to their houses inside the laboratory doing not much. But the real shtick of where is this movie going, this is weird and nonsensical, is the fact that it is then revealed that while the two other science lab people are just general comic relief, I don't think any of the kids are laughing kind of humor, the main super evil extra laboratory lady turns out to actually be a robot, and they decided to animate her with the Paramount 3D CGI body and then her real IRL flesh tuber face. And it is, you might have seen the occasional shot of it in the background, it is horrendously animated. Like, it is genuinely like, why have you done this? I don't think it's funny. I don't think it's that entertaining. And even if it was, it quickly overstays its welcome, because it goes on for like the last third of the movie. She's just constantly in this uncomfortably animated, weirdly like tentacly body that, like, yeah, it moves really not well. Of course, it moves unrealistically, but it's unnerving, is what it is. They then also do jokes like when she has her flashback sequence as a kid, she has a kid body but the exact same adult head, which again, I think is funny once, but then it just kind of keeps going. It's like they're going for the comedy, I guess, really is the next level of the overly detailed, uncomfortable zoom-in shot that the TV series has. Now they're going for over-elongated, uncomfortable 3D CGI mixed blend live-action shots for the sake of humor. The uncomfortableness is the humor, but I just think it makes it look incredibly, incredibly terrible. There's also a giant CGI fish that they're trying to feed on the side who ends up eating only the face head of the robot lady, so then she becomes a face inside of the fish. Also, that's her motivation. She just wants to hug fish all the time. She's really into fish. It's weird. The idea of expanding to the Sandy family, I think, is quite fun, and, you know, the fact that you get to see Texas from way above and it's like a nice actual map board, you know, there's faintly interesting elements here, but this is very clearly a spin-off movie that doesn't really know what to do with itself. The animation is notably lower, the style of comedy is fitting to a formula in a way that might not necessarily work. SpongeBob as a character isn't as fun or interesting as he could be, and any additions that the likes of Squidward or Patrick or Mr. Krabs do bring in is minimal, and they just look weird the whole time. They literally look like video game NPCs, and oftentimes you can see, if you look at one of them, like when they're not the main focus of a shot, they're just dead-eyed looking forwards. It's really notably cheaper. It's Paramount making weird choices again and again. Now, as I poked a little bit earlier, the marketing behind this movie has also been a really weird one. I don't know what exactly caused the development hell and the leak from before, but even now when we see like reveals of the marketing images, one of the weird choices is always Sandy flying up to the sky where they're eventually going to get to a plane, and she's just grabbing SpongeBob directly by the crotch. The logo for her movie is literally Saving Bikini Bottom! A Sandy Cheeks movie, as if to say that they have no confidence of her as an actual protagonist, which, you know, kind of makes sense. She's not got the most star power out of the cast, I guess. She ain't SpongeBob. There have been additional now parody film posters going around from Netflix that are trying their best to sell the show, sure. Oh, also, yeah, that's another thing that they didn't mention in the marketing. This is partially a musical. Of course it is. I mean, to be fair, the original SpongeBob movie was a musical, so it makes sense. But yeah, there's like a song at the start and the end, probably one in the middle, but I don't particularly remember. Sure. And naturally, with it being quite this late-stage Paramount production, any acting from the real-world counterparts are awkward, uncomfortable, and extra childish, and there are all sorts of celebrity appearances, even in voice acting form. They come across a gang of snakes in the wild, wild desert. There's a twister at the start that flings them off course, and when they finally get back to the location they initially, you know, landed towards, that same twister is there again. Oh, God, it's so stupid. And overall, through its just sheer formulaic nature and weird spin-off direction of expanding all of the Paramount invasive influences on the SpongeBob universe, this movie just this acts to be a real late-stage SpongeBob movie. You know what I mean? It is exactly what you think it is. And in every regard, it's just poor quality that's been diminishing every SpongeBob movie since the first. I'm personally stunned to see SpongeBob fall even more from grace. But I guess with studios like this overheading it, it really was inevitable to see. The Sandy Cheeks movie, or Saving Bikini Bottom, is easily the worst SpongeBob movie to date. And I'm sure it's only going to get worse from here, as they've probably announced all sorts of other SpongeBob movies they're making on the side as well. Even when keeping more 3D than ever, it's 3D that's cheaper, you know? We're not even able to enjoy the visuals as much anymore. On that note, I'm going to end things off there. My name's been Daz. Thank you very much for reaching the end of this video. Do let us know your thoughts on the Sandy Cheeks movie if you've even seen it. It's a direct-to-Netflix movie anyway, so I'll be surprised how on earth the profits work anyway. And all in all, it's just disappointing through and through. So on that note, I shall see you in a little bit. And no, if you have been seeing a robot horse in this movie and don't know where it's from, don't worry, I don't know either.